submit that presentation is quite a tough act to follow. It really demonstrates the amount of innovation and disruption that's happening in the market at the moment. That's probably got a few people in this room quite worried. So hopefully this won't add to your concerns or worries. So some of the big picture trends at the moment, looking at what's impacting everyone in this room, looking at some of the key global trends that are impacting consumers. So on the left-hand side there, you can see some of the trends that are beginning to really impact the global consumer, particularly in emerging markets, where we're seeing the rise of urbanization and we're seeing a growing middle class that are gaining more readily available access to the internet and using that access to shop. But we're also seeing a bit closer to home, a growing sort of aging population, which is also impacting how we want to shop. But some of the things that are really impacting people in this room and probably causing the biggest level of concern is down the right-hand side there, where is that access to technology. And this is meaning we've got an increasingly tech-savvy consumer, an increasingly connected consumer, an increasingly empowered consumer. And that is fundamentally changing the way consumers want to and expect to interact, engage, and shop. And that's fundamentally changing what they're demanding from everyone in this room when it comes to their shopping experiences. If that wasn't really enough to deal with, you've got these two guys to deal with. It's still very, very early days to understand really how it's impacting. The recent retail sales that came out for the UK started to show a bit of a slowdown, which we can start to see might be contributed to consumers' concerns about Brexit. A lot of that is to do with uncertainty. What we are beginning to see, though, is the huge amount of pressure that's coming through into this supply chain. We've already seen a bit of a spat between Unilever and Tesco about prices. But what we can begin to see, we start to look at Trump. This day doesn't go by without him coming in the news for some reason or some occasion. But we're seeing some commonalities between the two here. And that's really around value and how that is changing. What consumers consider to be value, and it's not necessarily just about price. But what we are beginning to see is a value-conscious consumer. So it's not just about the lowest price, it's about demonstrating value to that consumer to justify that expense. And that's also very true in the US as well. There's still lots of very uncertainties around the US, so that's containing sort of discretionary spend. But at the same time, you've got rising costs, so that is going to squeeze pressures and put a huge amount of pressure on margin. So they're going to be looking for better ways and more efficient ways to allow consumers to shop. So as we're seeing, increasingly, it's becoming far harder to search for growth and the fight for share. These two guys, Brexit and Trump, are certainly going to make life that little bit more difficult, particularly when we start talking about cross-border and particularly when we talk about e-commerce. So when we actually start looking at what's happening with e-commerce, we can start to look about where the growth is coming from. And quite often we get very excited by the big, exciting growth rates that come through, and we get very carried away about what those mean, especially when we look at emerging markets. But what's very important to remember is that mix between modern and traditional retail. So even though we're seeing some huge growth rates coming through, particularly from sort of Africa and Eurasia, it's still a tiny, tiny proportion of spend. But that doesn't mean it's not disrupting or influencing spend across the whole ecosystem. And that's especially true when we start looking at Asia. When we start looking at China and South Korea, huge amounts of growth, but it's becoming more and more as a proportion of spend. And that's the same in Europe. Overall, about 10% here in the UK, that's a lot higher. France and Germany are starting to catch up, and even Italy and Spain are seeing more and more spend transfer to online channel. And in the US, that's still relatively high. So by 2018, we're starting to see proportions becoming around this double digit, but rapidly changing. And that's not even to mention the big elephant in the room, Amazon. This is looking at Europe and how fast they're going to grow between now and 2021. So the next 5 years, that is how fast Amazon is forecasted to grow. That's the five biggest European grocers. Amazon is getting better and better at attracting us into their ecosystem and getting us to shop across more categories more often. They're using Prime as our ultimate weapon to draw us into that ecosystem, locking us in and encouraging us to shop more often. So two big sort of frightening aspects here. But what is important to remember now is that shopping and the evolution of shopping is changing. We're sort of moving beyond sort of multi-channel or omni-channel. Consumers are now really expecting to engage anytime, anywhere, however, wherever they choose. But most importantly, it's now moved on from anything else. It's about me. It's about making it relevant for me. It's my commerce. It's about experiences. We as shoppers and as consumers are in greater control of our shopping experiences and of our expectations of how, when, and where we shop. Switching between devices, switching between touch points. We expect to get that seamless experience of the brand because, after all, consumers only see and shop the brand. We don't see and shop the channel. We don't say we're going to go omni-channeling this weekend. We don't say we're going to go fidgeting this weekend. We say we're going to go shopping this weekend. And what we're seeing because of that is that this is what we see, or what I see now, as the next stage. We're moving on from the omni-channel. We're moving on to what we see as completely frictionless experiences. And that's the most important word, it's experiences. Because consumers are increasingly now looking for that joined up, tell me, make it relevant for me, make it more curated for me, make it meaningful for me. You know all about me. You know what I like, what I don't like. So tell me what I need to know, show me what I want to buy, and make it relevant for me. So we're using more meaningful, more creative, more personal, more frictionless, and more predictive. And we saw some of the new innovation in the presentation earlier that highlights just some of those things that come in. But what's actually looking to make that happen? Well, when we start looking at making it meaningful and created, it's that content versus commerce. It's actually user-generated commerce and user-generated content which becomes far more impactful at influencing how we buy and what we buy. We're also looking at social commerce. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but social commerce is becoming so much more important. But we're also looking at frictionless, making it easy, taking away those pain points, taking away those barriers to let me get to my product as quickly and as easily as possible. And also looking at new technology that makes it connective and predictive. Take away the pain of buying the irregular household items and just say, actually, you know what, let someone else do that. I want to go off and enjoy myself and do some more exciting shopping than buying household goods. But what we're saying is that as we see spend transferring online, it doesn't necessarily mean we've got an online channel and an offline channel. That hasn't been the case for a while. What we are seeing now is that, yes, 10% of spend might be going through the online channel, but 60% of spend is going to be influenced by digital and online. And it's going to certainly have 100% impact on everything we do. So any business planning, any joint business planning, any strategic planning must have, it's probably a no-brainer, must have digital as an integral part of that. And increasingly so, it is becoming an integral part of any business plans. And that's because the path to purchase or the shopper journey now looks probably a little bit more like this. It used to be very linear, very simple, very easy. But now the number of interruption points, number of consideration sets has pretty much exploded. But being able to engage and interact with this consumer, and more importantly, convert them from someone looking to someone buying at any one of these touch points has now become absolutely fundamentally crucial. And that's because consumers now want this. They're not asking for much, but they want retailers and brands to be pretty much as clever as Google. They want it to be as social as Facebook or as immediate as Twitter. They want it to be as personal as Amazon, if not better, because even they aren't great at it. You want it to be as easy as Apple, and you want it to be as visual as Instagram or as informative and educational or inspirational as Wikipedia, if not more so, and as entertaining as YouTube. So those are the kind of levels of expectations and demands that consumers are beginning to expect or want. And what's very interesting now is that it's not just about retailers, it's not just about marketplaces, it's about the intermediaries. It's about these guys who compile huge amounts, aggregators of data, who understand what brands people want to buy, when they want to buy them, and how they want to buy them. But they also are incredibly good at creating another route to market for brands, so another way to sell, and leverage all that data to make it more relevant and more tailored and more curated, even sort of to the local areas. So it's a way of actually the likes of big retailers to get around the final mile headache. But what we're also seeing is the likes of Amazon and Uber and Facebook, again, changing our expectations, again, around speed, fulfillment, ease of shop, and convenience. So these are beginning to, again, disrupt but most important, disrupt what we expect from brands and retailers to provide us. And as I mentioned before about social commerce and social media, this is a question of now brands and retailers need to be where the shopper is, not where they want them to be. If you think about Generation Z and millennials, they're spending more and more of their time on social media. They're more and more influenced by their peers than they are about marketing and brands. So it makes sense, if that's where they're looking for you, that's where you need to be, and it makes sense to enable them to purchase at that moment rather than sending them off to another place where they have to purchase. So don't create steps, allow them to convert quickly and easily. Facebook Marketplace is just one example of how they're beginning to experiment with social commerce. Twitter buy buttons, varying degrees of success, but social commerce is no longer just about influencing purchasing decisions and building brand advocacy. It's increasingly about a place to actually purchase and integrating social media with other apps and other technology to engage and inspire and lock in that brand advocacy. And that's because really now, we're not just a question or a stage of the traditional routes to market in terms of media and media planning. Retailers are now also media platforms too. So we're ready for this entire shift in dynamics of how you reach and how you influence spending decisions. So when those big commercial customers become your media agency or your ad agency, that changes your media planning and your marketing mix. And if we just start to look at, again, Amazon, just look at their ecosystem and you can see how they can influence and convert you at any single stage. If you start to look at just the actual retail platform, but when we start to look at how they ingrain you, entice you in through Prime, and then deepen their relationship and enrich the relationship and then ingrain the relationship. But here is just looking at every single touch point, they're able to influence purchasing decisions. But it's all great to actually say all this big exciting disruption and all this innovation, but fundamentally what it comes down to, as I mentioned before, is that it's still all just shopping. But what is happening is that consumers are expecting that convenience to be redefined. So yes, they want it to be stress-free. Yes, they want it to be streamlined. They want to remove any barriers or pain points between me and the product. Allow me to get it to as quickly and easily, but don't remove the enjoyment. Don't remove the experience. And that is, I think, one of the most important things. Make it fast, but don't make it less fun. And that's where you can help, and that's where brands and retailers can help more and more by collaborating and working together with these new touch points, with these new platforms, to enable consumers to shop however, whenever, and wherever they want, but importantly, on their terms. And that requires having connected, easy, and enjoyable experiences. By connected, we mean everything from the ultimate shopping companion. That one constant throughout that incredibly complex shopper journey is the mobile. Wearable tech, biometrics, again, personalized, tailored, relevant. And even a device that sits on your bin that orders things for you when you throw them away, using the Dash technology. And again, voice commerce. But it's making it easy. So we're seeing more and more retailers, Tesco and Sainsbury's, combining all their websites, all their platforms onto one marketplace. Again, making that frictionless shopping experience. 2-day, 1-day delivery, that's no longer enough. We now want it within an hour. Others, again, such as Sainsbury's and Tesco, are reacting to Amazon 1-hour delivery, and even likes of Carrefour and Auchan in France, even they are beginning to do that as well. But auto-replenishment, again, those mundane, everyday items that you want delivered, that's a fantastic way to lock in loyalty and lock in that auto-replenishment. And that kind of technology, it's great once you're in the ecosystem, but how do you disrupt that purchasing behavior? How do you not only interrupt the autopilot, how do you actually disrupt that behavior? But making it enjoyable is becoming more and more important. People want experiences. So Tesco's, and this again is an example of using user-generated content or social media to actually create fantastic user-generated content which inspires, which educates, but also blending in social media with mobile apps and mobile technology, again, to make it more relevant. And that's because, yes, we want really great experiences, and yes, we want things to be frictionless and easy and all those pain points to be removed. But you can't have one without the other. You have to have something that blends both together. So we actually start to map all these different new disruptions and all these different new touch points and start to understand which ones will resonate in making things fantastically frictionless and remove all those pain points, and which ones will give us the best experience. It's no real surprise to see that mobile is up there, because mobile is the way you can hyper-target the customer with hyper-targeted, hyper-personalized, hyper-relevant content whenever they are in purchasing mode and throughout that shopper journey. So yes, auto-replenishment is going to be great, but where's the excitement? It's just things being delivered regularly, unless you can inspire them with delight boxes. Fulfillment, that's now becoming just a necessity. That's become an expectation of making things quick and simple. But building solutions around mobile will incorporate social commerce, content versus commerce, and even voice shopping. When we talk about influence, I think there are three key things at play here. I think this sort of brings on the sort of AI, and this brings in the sort of pro-market and cognitive commerce element. The first one there is connection. Shopping and search are beginning to blend, beginning to become just one. That instant gratification generation, you don't necessarily go out and search. A lot of searches start on Amazon. A lot of searches start, obviously, with Google and the immediate short shopper journey. Brands and retailers have spent a huge amount of time and money in understanding shopper missions and shopper occasions. But what we're increasingly happening now with the likes of Prime Now, creating new moments, creating perpetual moments of truth where that is beginning to blend. So it's understanding how you can use all that amazing data and understanding how you can use all that amazing insight when it comes to shopper missions to search. When we look at replenishment, this again is removing those pain points, making it frictionless, making it easy. Now, a great example here is understanding the fact that Unilever, they didn't buy that Dollar Shave Club. They didn't buy them because they wanted billions and billions of razors. They bought them because they needed to understand how they can create new relationships with customers and get better, closer relationships with customers, and more importantly, how they can build in that ecosystem and have that customer data, and how they can lock in loyalty. So more and more retailers now and more brands are looking not to necessarily understand the shopper, but to have more meaningful relationships with them through that shopper data. And when we're talking about automation, that's shopping and automated labs. When we talk about AI, we talk about when your fridge or your washing machine is beginning to do all your shopping for you, or you're doing it through your voice. How is you as a brand, and how do you as a retailer become discoverable? How do you become visible, and how do you become shoppable in that environment? How do you actually make sure you are the brand of choice? And that's really about how you can reinvent yourself and how you become more curated and tailored. Now, I don't know if anyone in this room would guess, unless they've got good eyes and see in the bottom right, which retailer this actually is. This is Amazon. Two of their biggest bets, or three of their biggest bets, is grocery, health and beauty, and fashion. Now, to crack those, they're not retailers, they're a tech company. They're not a retailer. This is a very, very different approach for them. It's far more editorial, far more curated, far more experience-driven in their approach. Doesn't take long, doesn't take a few more clicks and then you're back to the old Amazon, but this skin is this testament to what they're doing. And if they're now blending all that data and all that understanding about you as a shopper in some sort of augmented, artificial intelligence rather, you start to get a picture of, actually, why do I need to go to a store? Why do I need to go anywhere else for my shopping missions and my shopping occasions? I can get it all through Amazon, because I can get it delivered within an hour. I can use Prime. I can actually get all the benefits of all the things I need through Amazon. So what can others do to learn from, to either capitalize on this growth or combat it? One of the best examples I've seen, and this is not that new, but it's still a very, very good example. And it's a very good example for several reasons. It's a very good example because it creates a completely frictionless shopping experience. This is Hyundai, and they've got a few of these stores now with Rocker, and Rocker did it recently as well with Jaguar. It's not normal, a few years ago, to see a car dealership in a shopping center. But now, because again, they wanted brand acquisition, they wanted to create more experience, they opened up in the shopping center. completely changing the type of shopper they attracted, far younger, more women. Fantastic initiative. But what they really did, which was more revolutionary, is they removed every single pain point or every single point of friction along the shopper journey, along the path to purchase. They made it quick and easy to trade in your old car, made it quick and easy to do the finance. And they've replicated that online. So you can now buy a car within 5 minutes online. Amazon are also selling cars online. Alibaba are selling Maseratis online. I don't know who buys a Maserati, let alone who buys one on Alibaba. But good luck to them. I wish I was. But it shows the disruption and the level of influence and the level of expectations when it comes to purchasing. And a few years ago, again, we also see retailers flooding the store with technology, hoping that it would digitize the store, hoping that would bring the best of both worlds. But they quickly realized that unless that technology solved a pain point or met a need or improved or enhanced the experience, it wasn't really worth it. Not only that, it was incredibly expensive to do and incredibly expensive to maintain. What we're seeing now is that retailers are beginning to realize that why don't we just build the solutions around the technology that consumers are bringing into store with them? That makes far more sense. So they're building solutions very capably around mobile, but they're also equipping the people in the store with the tools of the digital age so they can actually deal with, and on a level pegging with, the person that comes into store. Nothing worse than going into store and saying, do you have it in stock? And then the person gets out the mobile and go, well, I can see it's in your store next door. That doesn't make sense. Equipping the staff with that knowledge gives them transparency and visibility and allows them to better serve the customer and allows them to create that better hospitality. Stores are vital. They just need to be reinvented. They need to become destinations appeal where you can provide that service and hospitality and use tech to enhance that experience. And when we talk about big data and mega data and everything else, to me, it's actually about small data. And what I mean by small data is making that data relevant. So you don't just know about a certain demographic. You don't necessarily know about a certain group. You know about me. You know about me as Malcolm and what Malcolm wants to shop and buy. And if I'm willing to part with my data and I'm willing to share my data with you, the least you can do is give me something in return. And that is creating more personalized, more relevant experiences, that curated content. And here we're seeing some good examples of what retailers are already doing. I mean, Boots, for example, are looking to personalize products and having initiatives in stores which are about beauty, and you can personalize the actual product itself. Tom's up in the right-hand corner there. That's actually an interactive store which starts to showcase and demonstrate products that you are showing interest in and starts to push certain products that you might be interested in depending on how you would behave in the store. I don't know if anyone saw in the press, Google and H&M doing a completely curated, personalized dress based on your searching, based on your habits, based on what you're looking for. Or even Shop Direct working with IBM Watson on their personalization. I think that when it comes to online experiences, they're probably one of the best in class. And even looking at the likes of Joe Wicks, and that's about understanding, I want to sell into your lifestyle and make it more relevant and personal to you. And Rebecca Minkoff launched a bag for Fashion Week with tags, which you can then get more personal curated content and promotions and deals. So it's buying into that lifestyle, buying into that ecosystem, and once they're there, rewarding and recognizing. But what we're also very important to understand is we used to think about online and the internet as the ultimate, the infinite choice. That's not really the case, because the level of choice you've got is only as big as the screen that you're looking at. And we haven't all got screens like this at home. And if we did, hey, we'd have a huge amount of choice. But that screen's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, which makes being discoverable, visible, and shoppable gets harder and harder and harder. As it goes to mobile, we've seen the likes of Unilever with their mobile hero images as best-in-class examples of how to stand out and how to be visible. But when we start getting that screen is no longer there, how are you then visible? How do you become discoverable when it's all about voice commerce and when we are looking at Alexa? Because you can guarantee Alexa won't just be making you shop from Amazon, it increasingly will give you Amazon's brands or Amazon's favorites or Amazon's suggestions. So again, in this new world of channelless, frictionless environment, being discoverable is going to be hard enough, but being shoppable is certainly going to get a lot harder. And that's because we're moving towards this sort of zero moment of truth. The shopping journey, the path to purchase, is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. The opportunities to engage and interact and influence that behavior and influence the choice is getting harder, especially when, for certain products and certain brands, we're in that auto-replenishment cycle, or especially when we're just talking to Alexa and saying, Alexa, please buy me. And if we then take that further to the programmatic commerce and we give up that decision for certain products and categories, it might be fine for household goods, it might be fine for certain staple items, but will we trust that to buy our kids' Christmas presents or our wife's Christmas present? Probably not. Well, I know I wouldn't. This is a great example of how some brands and how some startups are beginning to leverage the power of mobile, social, and data analytics. It's the Tinder for fashion. It puts the consumer or the shopper completely in control. It allows them to see things that they love when they're out shopping or when they're online and just say, yes, I like that, creating their own personal shopping ecosystem, creating their own curated shopping environment, and then sharing that with friends. So how do you as a brand or as a retailer become part of that conversation? How do you become part and be relevant on their radar? Because if you're not part of that conversation, you won't be added to their basket, and you certainly won't be part of their ecosystem. And one example to try and wrap things up, this is another fantastic example that really demonstrates the instant gratification generation and what they're becoming to expect in the fact that they can shop content and they can share it immediately with friends. This was the fashion show just before Alibaba's Singles Day in 2016, and they partnered with many brands, including Adidas, including Gap, and it was a completely live and interactive fashion show. People could buy immediately what they saw and share their experiences online through social media. Again, enable them to shop however, whenever, and wherever they are on their terms, being where they are looking, not where you necessarily want to be. So, excuse the slightly skewed thing here. Essentially, there are sort of six key things I think to take away, but the overarching, I think, message would be, if you bring simplicity, if you make it easy, you make it frictionless, and you allow them to shop however, whenever they want in that channel's environment, and at the same time giving them experiences that resonate and sell into their lifestyle, you're onto a winner. It sounds quite easy to stand here and say that, but what we're beginning to see now is that retailers and brands working together and collaborating more and using technology to help them do that and partnering with tech companies to enable them to do that. And we are seeing that that journey is becoming far more fragmented, but they are expecting that seamless experience. And we're beginning to see that you have to start to build around the technology that consumers want to use and are using, whether that's the mobile or moving towards the likes of Alexa devices. And it's really having to engage with retailers and making content relevant to their lifestyles, so engage with them in more meaningful ways and leveraging that personal data to deliver that. And also, you must engage, however, wherever they are, in store or outside the store, but remembering that the store still plays an incredibly important role. So I think those are a few key things to leave you with, but I'm happy to take any questions you might have, if we do have some time. But if not, thank you very much for listening.